Streaming live on Facebook, YouTube, Twitch, and blasttheradio.com, this is The Lowell Green Show. The number to call and be heard around the world is 613-413-2217. Or email Lowell at blasttheradio.com. And now, here is Lowell Green.
Folks, anything you want to discuss this afternoon, anything you think deserves a public airing, the lines are wide open, the texts are wide open. I don't know about you, but I'm getting a little worried that we in Ottawa are going to get stuck with an extreme radical socialist as mayor. So far, aside from Bob Chiarelli, the only candidate indicating that they are running are from the very hard left, in particular, Catherine McKenney, who, if elected, would be a total disaster for this city. And I'm going to tell you, if no new candidates come forward, I would suspect that Catherine McKenney would win, particularly if the voter turnout is somewhere under 40%. The mere thought of Catherine McKenney as mayor of this city, with an extreme left-wing council to begin with, just scares the bejabbers out of me. I don't know about you. Any thoughts on that? I don't know why we can't get any other candidates to step forward here. And talking about the hard left, something has happened in the Kawartha Lakes region that I find very disturbing. Now, you may not, but I would like your reaction. As I say, I find it very disturbing. An employee of the Kawartha Dairy has fastened a sign to her car saying, "We are the fringe, peace, love, unity, and freedom." And attached to the sign is a Canadian flag. Believe it or not, that sign has raised the ire of so many residents of the area. They've complained to the employer. The employer has told the employee, you got to take the sign down. You may think, at first glance, it looks like just a minor story. Just another example of the cancel culture that seems to be rampaging across the country. But let's think a little bit more about it, okay? Ask yourself, what's offensive about saying peace, love, unity, and freedom? I think it's pretty obvious that even the staunchest socialist would not object to that, which means the objections are because of what else the sign says. We are the fringe. Oh, why would people object to that? Well, it's pretty obvious. We are the fringe is a direct reference to Trudeau's comments about the truckers' convoy being nothing more than a fringe group of racists and terrorists. Remember that? The fringe. So no doubt this sign is intended as a slap in the face for our Prime Minister, which apparently, think about this, apparently today is not allowed. Oh, think of it. A Canadian citizen, just a dairy worker, okay, blue-collar worker, posting a non-profane criticism of Justin Trudeau, forced to stop the display of criticism. Employer said, listen, we've had so many complaints here, people going to cancel their dairy services, et cetera, that you got to take the sign down, or we'll have to let you go. So here's what I find so damn disturbing. Our Prime Minister can call a group of peaceful truckers, and they were peaceful, and tens of thousands, and there were tens of thousands of supporters all across the country. He can call them all kinds of nasty names, even have some of their bank accounts frozen. But a poor little dairy employee had better not openly criticize or poke fun at the Prime Minister, or that's it, curtains, lose your job. what's your reaction to this? I know at first you're going to say, Green, what do you, I mean, this is just a minor story, but it seems to me that there's something deeper, something almost sinister involved with this kind of thing. If your reaction is anything like mine, which is a disbelief that democracy has taken such a kick in the pants in this country that apparently we aren't allowed to criticize the prime minister anymore. Just one more sign of, as I say, almost a sinister manner in which Trudeau has been able to essentially silence most of the criticism against him and his party. He spent billions, and I mean billions of dollars, buying the media. He's had highly critical reporters arrested or kicked out of his rallies. It's quite astonishing. He is responsible, I believe, for more than a few journalists, including perhaps even me, losing their jobs. And now a dairy worker is threatened with firing if they don't stop essentially poking fun at the prime minister. Kind of scary, I think. What's your reaction? I I'm I'm disturbed. Maybe I'm reading this the wrong way, but you know, we the fringe, we are the fringe. That's the offense. It is now offensive in Canada to write "We are the fringe," a reference to Justin Trudeau. You're not allowed, essentially, to poke fun at the prime minister. And I mean, I think as further evidence of the prime minister's attempts to silence all criticism is the bill which essentially is going to try and silence me and maybe even John Milkey. That's deeply disturbing as well, and they're ramming it through. Going to give the CRTC control over what I say or what you say or what you write or anything else on Facebook or YouTube or Twitter. The government's going to have control over what you say on all social media. That's part of it. And this is the extreme. I mean, you know, you post a sign in your car saying "We are the fringe," and you're going to lose your job. So God help you if you post some sort of criticism on social media after this bill is passed. Any thoughts on that, John? Any reaction? It may be that people aren't concerned about it. I don't know.
No, we're getting some reaction for sure. Let's tell people how to get in touch.
Yeah, please.
Yeah, we invite your phone calls and your texts at 613-413-2217. Whether you're on my Facebook, the Blast the Radio Facebook, or Lowell's Facebook, post your comments underneath the video that you're watching, and we can pop them up on the screen. I can read them to Lowell that way as well. We're also on Twitch, YouTube, and Twitter. All your show links, how to listen, etc. If you just go to lowellgreen.com or blasttheradio.com/lowellgreen, your links are right there. Fringe certainly became a buzzword because of that convoy, but I don't know if that's a direct attack on the prime minister. I think, what if they're just borrowing that term? I mean, we are the fringe. We're the small minority who still believe in peace, love, unity, and freedom. I don't see how that translates to the prime minister at all. That's a stretch, and it comes down to me, this whole employee code of conduct thing.
No, it's the fringe. There's no question
that
it's the phrase. Oh, absolutely. We are the fringe. I mean, why else would she write that? I mean, very clearly, I don't think
that's how people are obviously interpreting it.
Oh, of course, and I'm sure that was the intent as well. I don't think. I think that she fully intended "We are the fringe." Was a poke at Trudeau for his comments about the fringe, but I think it's fair comment.
It beats F Trudeau.
Well, yeah. I mean, what I'm saying, and I mentioned this in my comments, that this is non-profane, essentially quoting what the prime minister said. We are the fringe, and what she's doing is pointing out that hey, we're the ordinary blue collar workers here. Okay, we're not the elites. We're not public servants, et cetera, et cetera. We're just ordinary working people here, trying to put food on the table, et cetera, et cetera. And essentially, our kind were described as as fringe. The prime minister did describe this woman essentially as fringe, a fringe. He said that they were racist and terrorists, and used a number of other phrases.
So, in other words, not a liberal supporter.
Yeah, essentially that. But there's two things here. There's the fact that people would find this offensive, and very clearly, I mean, I don't see how anybody, even Catherine McKinney, would be offended by saying peace, love, and freedom. I don't see how anybody would be offended by that. So very clearly, it's the phrase "we are the fringe" that a lot of people are finding offensive. So that I find really, really scary, because very clearly there are a lot of people out there, ordinary people, who don't think you should be allowed to poke fun at the prime minister. So, and then there's the second thing, and that is that the employee, or the employer, I'm sorry, Kawartha Dairy, listen to these people rather than saying, "Hey, wait a minute, this is Canada. We have freedom of speech here." They didn't have the guts to do that. So that's that to me is disturbing on more than one level there.
It's one thing if the
Yes.
employee is wearing a T-shirt or something while working inside the dairy, dealing with customers. It's another thing if that employee has it on their own
Yeah, that's
personal
good
vehicle.
point. But what's possibly, even if they wore a shirt saying "We are the fringe," what what possible offense could anybody, or should anybody, take, unless they say, "Hey, that's a slap at our prime minister. You can't do that." That's essentially what's happening here. We've got all kinds of people. This is in the Peterborough area, Kawartha Lakes. All kinds of people who are saying you should not be allowed to poke fun or criticize our prime minister publicly. That's essentially what they're saying. And then we've got an employer, a major employer for the area, saying, "Yeah, we agree. You can't poke fun at our prime minister." Oh yeah, yeah. Wait a minute. Hold it. Is this North Korea? Is this Cuba here? I mean, that to me, I just it scares the hell out of me, particularly after my experience when, and I've said this before, I'm absolutely convinced. I don't have proof. I'll admit that, but I'm absolutely convinced it was criticism from Trudeau or his, Gerald Butts or whoever, that got Rob Snow and Lowell Green and a number of other conservatives kicked out of CFRA. No question in my mind. I mean, look at I mean how he has silenced the media in other ways. He's poured more than $2 billion into the media, including the CBC, to buy the media, and he's done so, I think, for the most part, quite successfully. Um, I have another topic here. People, if you've got any thoughts on that, please, I'd love to hear from you. Do you find it disturbing? What's your interpretation? Am I just blowing this out of proportion? On another topic, it's spring. The ice is out of the rivers. So, if history is any indicator, a few dozen illegal guns got smuggled across the St. Lawrence last night and will soon be in the hands of some local gang bangers. Virtually nothing's being done to stop smuggling of guns and tobacco. They know where this is being smuggled. For the most part, you know, native reserves are involved here. And in fact, I think even CBC admitted that. So as a consequence, they just will not deal with it. But legal gun owners, of course, once again going to be targeted. New legislation, more red tape for hunters, farmers, target shooters. But don't worry, Trudeau says, along with everything else, we've got a few dollars, he says, we're going to provide better border security, better border surveillance. What a laugh. There are now, I mean, what are we looking at from essentially Cornwall south right down to, I guess, Gananoque pretty well? Well, what, 100 miles or so? Maybe even a little bit more east of Cornwall, the St. Lawrence River. Well, let's say from Montreal through to Gananoque, you're looking at least 100 miles. So there's at least 100 miles of the St. Lawrence River across which guns, tobacco, and other things are being smuggled. They now have two Border Patrol boats for roughly 100 miles. So Trudeau and his new bill that targets hunters, etc., it's got enough money for one more. So, folks, this is it. This is really going to scare the pants off the smugglers, okay? Instead of two boats patrolling 100 miles, there's going to be three boats patrolling 100 miles. And people are buying this. I mean, people are buying. Oh, yeah, he's going to stop the smuggling. Hi.
FYI, distance between Gananoque and Montreal is 255 and a half
Okay,
kilometers.
I'm out by 100 miles. But essentially, that's what we're looking at. Montreal through to Gananoque. I know this because for many, many years I had a little island off Ivy Lee, just east of Gananoque, and I know that the smugglers were coming across there. We'd hear them at night. Oh my goodness, and I mean, there's so many different ways. As I said, there's even a right near Ivy Lee. There's a place called Smuggler's Cove, which is
Right.
but so they've increased the patrol boats from 2 to 3 for how many 250 miles or kilometers?
255.6 kilometers.
So that's about 200 miles.
Yep.
3 patrol boats. That's really going to stop them. So that's it, folks. That's what your prime minister has done. Anybody any thoughts on any of that? Before we do that, I want to get a word in here for our good friends at Shields. I must tell you that Shields has in Pakenham has a really terrific sale underway right now. Depending upon the number, if you buy more than, in particular, you're going to save money if you buy more than one appliance. You're starting, you bought a new home, a new apartment, and you need 3 or 4 appliances or maybe more. You can save a lot of money. Electrolux, for example, very well known, very popular brand, has a terrific sale right now. 10% off if you buy 1 or 2 pieces of appliance. 10% off. 3 to 4 pieces of appliance, 20% off. So I'm sorry, if there's 5 or more, it's 20% off. I'll get it right here. So what I'm saying to you is that, and that's just one example, but you can save up to $1,000 depending upon what it is you're buying and how many. There's a really good sale. And yes, and I don't think I've mentioned this very often. Yes, there is financing. I know that money is very hard to come by these days, and there's some very good financing deals at Shields. Yes, they provide financing. You'll see it all on their website, folks. Very easy to use. You can save yourself. By the way, this sale from Electrolux ends on June 22nd, just as one example. But there are some really good other deals as well, really good sales underway at Shields. Shields.ca. John, what do we got coming in?
All right, what do you want to go to first? The smuggling issue or
whatever tickles your fancy.
Oh, well, let's not discuss my fancy. Let's go to Penny. She was first in. She says, I love this comment. I remember when Stittsville was just beyond the fringe.
Yeah, that was my phrase. I did.
Was that yours?
Yes, it was. Mm-hmm.
Legendary.
Yeah.
Absolutely legendary. Okay.
It was DeLauria Motors, and it was my account. And I came up with the phrase DeLauria Motors in Stittsville, just beyond the fringe.
And it's stuck all these years later. Well, look at the hell you've created for someone in Kawartha now. Good job. Mike says, I agree with John. The employee should be able to say whatever they want in their own time, whatever happened to democracy. Murray says he was the one who called us the fringe minority. So referring to the prime minister. You started it. Pam says, does Trudeau really have COVID again? Peter says, Bob is running for mayor again. Good God. Peter says, Kawartha Dairy comes from a very conservative riding, federally and provincially, home of the former Premier Leslie Frost.
That's very true.
Joshua on Facebook, of course it expressed ire. An opinion was expressed that included anti-leftist sentiment. Okay.
Yep, it's very true. That's no question. It was, and we are the fringe in today's context is anti-left, no question.
I was just wondering if ire was a typo. I got it. Okay. Pam, Pam, feel free to explain this more. I get the finger from people for having a Canadian flag on my van. Really?
Yeah, that's very interesting because I don't know if there were any complaints about that. I mentioned the fact that this employee has the sign, we are the fringe, and does have a Canadian flag. And you're right. And there are some people now, apparently, who are offended if you have a Canadian flag. I think, once again...
Because it was part of the convoy?
That's right. I think it goes back. I really honestly do. It's a very strange phenomena that's occurring in this country.
Oh.
Well, one of the problems, I mean, is what forum do we have anymore to criticize the prime minister? Essentially, the media, with the exception of the Sun, is pretty well bought, and that includes even weekly newspapers, magazines, etc. They all got a pile of money, as we know. Even online, some of the online news coverage shows got money. Did you get any money, John?
I did not, nor do I want any. I prefer to be free to speak my mind about whoever our leader
I
is,
want some.
regardless of political
I'm
stripe.
sorry. I have no pride. I want some, but they won't give me any.
Okay,
I
fair
wonder
enough.
why. I wonder why.
So I mean, okay, if a company's not taking money directly, what other format would they have then, as far as a payoff? Would it be we'll turn a blind eye to renewing your license,
Yes.
that kind of
Yes.
stuff?
This is what applies to radio. That's the problem with what we call vertical integration. When one company owns more than, let's say, radio stations, they own television stations, et cetera, and the television stations require federal approval for rate increases, signal changes, et cetera. So the threat is very obvious. Hey, you better get that guy off CFRA. You're coming up. You
Got
want a
it.
rate, for CJOH or whatever the hell it is. Well, you got the guy has given us a bit of static there. Maybe you better deal with that. That's the way it works, folks. Come on, go ahead, John.
To YouTube, and our friend Boo Boo says Trudeau is the biggest idiot we've ever had for a puppet PM. Gerald Butts and everyone who voted Liberal should be ashamed of themselves for supporting him.
I don't think he's an idiot. I think that increasingly, I don't know. I may be overboard in saying he's sinister, but some of these things that they are doing, these underhanded bills that are being passed, et cetera, I think border on the sinister. It's a threat. There's no question that there is a threat here against freedom of speech, which I feel is very sinister. Go ahead, John.
To Facebook, one flag on your vehicle is patriotic. Several flags makes you look like one of them good old boys. Peter says the school board is asking if parents have issues if the school flies the flag. Have to dig up the letter sent home to parents just last week. Holy
No problem in
crap.
flying. No problem in flying the rainbow flag in any school, though.
I have no issue with that either, but all right. Steven says some are still flying the flag upside down on their vehicles. The forum to criticize the PM is the silent one. Vote the Liberals out, says Boo. Let's go to text, 613-413-2217, our first text of the day. You're right, Lowell. I just looked at the story, and there was just the flag that was of question on her van. She may have said things in conversations, but by all means, that flag should have no bearing on one's employment. We seem to be able to express ourselves in many ways, like the Canadian flag in rainbow colors. What's wrong with her flag saying we are the fringe? Pretty much echoing your sentiments there moments ago. Let's go back to Andre. Andre says, how about Quebec not allowing doctors to speak English to their patients?
Yeah, that's Bill. I mean, what is it? Bill 90. I lose track of this. Bill 96. No question, extremely discriminatory against Anglos. I think that any Anglos that are still left in Quebec, I think they've pretty well given up the fight. Go ahead, John.
Rob says, your helper has no problem flying the rainbow flag outside of schools? Oh, my God. Okay, I don't.
No, I don't either. So what I'm saying is there's no problem with that, but apparently there's a problem in some places with flying the Canadian flag. You got to, folks, come on, wake up. You got to listen to what we're saying here. Go ahead.
Sean says, simple. Trudeau's a dictator and the country is getting destroyed. Peter says people are going to get more angry at him. He's an SOB and people are going to revolt against this monster. Flag sales will be going up at Amazon for F. Trudeau. Peter also adds, as someone said on my local news group, he's a big baby, can't stand anyone saying anything bad about him. As Lowell has said, he's an SOB, period. Christine asks.
No, but there's a deeper question here. Why, to me, the very dangerous thing is the fact that, number one, so many people would find this objectionable, ordinary people, and number two, that the employer would go along with this. So this goes deeper than just Trudeau. It's what we're finding here is that people not only are prepared to accept loss of freedom of speech, but will themselves promote a loss of freedom of speech. If you object to somebody with a sign saying we are the fringe, then you are opposed to freedom of speech. Simple as that. Go ahead, please.
Christine asks, can one simultaneously support freedom and consequences?
Of course.
Dom is listening in the States and asks, what is the fringe? Dom, if you go back on the episode, you'll hear Lowell define that. It was a phrase uttered by our prime minister. He admits he's listening in the States, and he also, later on he says he did Google it, so he's up to date. Okay, there you go. Kay, dairy is going to get a boycott. If the employee has it on a personal car, then it should be allowed. Some liberal complained, I suspect. Well, we, the people, the fringe, can be offended by Kawartha Dairy's actions and boycott them. Oh, I see where this is going now. Anne says maybe the government can post no gun smuggling signs along the St. Lawrence River. That'll do it.
You know, the smuggling, it is so outrageous and so blatant that it's almost humorous. Um, I have some friends in Cornwall. They tell me there's one guy in particular. He has a house right along the river, and he says he hears them at night. They hears them at night. He says they don't even make any attempt at being silent. So and there's hardly a resident of Cornwall that doesn't know. Hey, almost every night during spring and summer, guns are being smuggled across. Many of them into Cornwall, and then they make their way to Toronto, Ottawa, etc. But don't worry, folks. Instead of two boats to patrol 200 miles, that's one boat per 100 miles. We now have three boats to patrol 200 miles. Go ahead.
All right, now I'm getting an earful from Rob. He says, guess you guys like indoctrinating little children. Let kids be kids and stop pushing your sexual preferences on little kids. Bye, guys. Hey, Rob, you know what? I'm willing to bet there are a lot of little kids going to those schools who have parents who are the same sex and are already well aware of the fact that same-sex relationships exist. It's not forcing beliefs on anybody. It's recognizing the real world.
You know what? Yeah, the real world. Get into the 20th century, let alone the 21st century, would you please? Stop dragging your knuckles. Go ahead.
Lived on the Hill Island, and they were using any spare dock available for smuggling, says Anne. It's one thing to fly the flag in your own property, but why fly any kind of groups or personal views, public offices or schools? This is what I'm saying, says Mike. Okay.
Well, because you have the right to do so. Well, that's why. It's called freedom of speech. Come on. Good. Oh, are you opposed, Mike? Are you opposed to freedom of speach? Goodness gracious.
Well,
you know what?
He doesn't. He apparently doesn't like it at public offices and schools.
Oh, well. In public offices and schools.
Right.
Well, this is not a public office and it's not a school.
Joshua says the larger issue is that people are increasingly comfortable being told what to do by government.
That's a fact. That's a fact.
Back to text. I support freedom of speech. I understand companies don't want controversy since they want to sell to everyone, but I'm sure the non-fringe will still buy dairy.
Let me tell you a little story. This is a true story. I've told the story before. I'm going to tell it again. When I was on CFRA, I was a controversial figure, obviously. I was a conservative. So the unions, for the most part, didn't like me at all. And I had a number of sponsors, and they were constantly under attack by members of unions and others complaining, if you continue to use Lowell Green, we won't buy your product anymore. One day, Hank Muse, owner of Myers Chevrolet, got a phone call from a representative of the Teachers Union of Ottawa. And they said, I just want you to know, Mr. Muse, that all union members have been alerted not to buy any of your products if you continue to use Lowell Green as your spokesperson. Oh, says Hank. Well, thank you very much for telling me that. Now that I know that some of you people in the union won't be buying my product, I'm going to have to use a lot more of Lowell's commercials in order to make up for the lost business. It was beautiful. It was beautiful. I mean, this is a guy. I love him. Hank Muse. I just love the guy. And this was his idea. He says, "Hey, you know what?" And it was beautiful. He was very polite, apparently. A couple of people were in the office when he was there, and to me, there is a guy that believed in democracy, freedom of speech. Not only that, I was selling a lot of cars for him as well.
Sure.
But there's a guy with a backbone, okay, with some guts. God damn it, we need more of that in this country. Go ahead, John.
I grew up with Rob Muse. He was a good friend of mine in school from kindergarten all through high school, and that apple did not fall far from the tree.
That's
I
right.
promise you. Yeah.
I worked with Rob for many years, right?
Great folks. Yep. Mike is back to say, I was just saying personal views should not be allowed in public offices or schools. If you allow that, then what's next? All right, email from Lisa. Lowell, there's no question a better job of illegal gun smuggling has to stop. Do take into account the fact that 8 out of 10 bodies in the morgue are women. Men don't have a problem with guns when they are legally not one's dead.
The point is that the problem with guns is not guns at the hands of hunters and target shooters. They've already passed all sorts of tests and et cetera, background checks, et cetera. That's not the problem. Have a look at who's killing who. It's mostly people in the drug trade. It's gangs killing each other with illegal guns that are smuggled. That's the problem. The problem is the smuggled guns. You know what? Anybody with a brain knows that. Go ahead, John.
Making the border more secure. Go in at Roxham Road, suggests Peter. And our final comment of the day for Christine. Many years ago, when I lived in Montreal, many establishments on Crescent Street refused to allow anyone in who was wearing a hockey jersey, including a Habs jersey. Too many fights. Maybe Kawartha Dairy wants to stick to being associated with dairy and stay out of everything else.
Stop making excuses, please. We all know what it's about. It's the fringe. It was a slap in the face, a criticism of the Prime Minister. Will you Liberals please give it up? Thank you. We'll be back tomorrow.
The Lowell Green Show is seen and heard live around the world at 2 p.m. Eastern. Connect with us online at blasttheradio.com/Lowell Green. Can't join us live? Download the Lowell Green podcast. Available on Apple, Spotify, Google, and more. Ask your smart speaker to play the Lowell Green podcast. This is a production of blasttheradio.com.